So, and then, right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this workshop. And the workshop today is about a phenomenon that a lot of uh, people who are bilingual or who are multilingual can relate to. The workshop is there are two languages in my head. So what are some strategy to help me to navigate my English academic writing? And I hope that this workshop can be very helpful for international students. So my name is Han Bin, and I am an international student from Vietnam. I'm currently a doctoral student in curriculum and instruction at the Department of Educational Theory and Practice, School of Education at UAlbany. And my research interest and my dissertation is all about bilingual writing, but I'm also interested in intercultural communications. Before I begin this workshop today, I want to give my thanks to ISSS, UAlbany International Student and Scholar Services, for allowing me to conduct and support me along the way to conduct this workshop. Without the help of ISSS, we will not have the workshop today. So thank you so much for giving me the platform and to be here and share my knowledge and opinion with international student from UAlbany. So before the workshop begin, I hope that you can also join me in some of the mini activities throughout the workshop. So in the workshop, I will go through some basic characteristics of bilingual writing, and then also how to apply those kind of characteristics in order to help you to navigate your writing in your second or your third language. But before we move to the content, like the details, I want to ask you to think a little bit about the benefits of knowing more than one language and share with me some of your perspective when you learn a language in addition to your mother tongue. Do you feel like there are some advantages or some disadvantages that this kind of situation may cause you?
I can jump in
Yes.
because in my case, my first language is Spanish, and I don't know if I consider myself a bilingual person, because I think that English is my second language. So I didn't receive like an education in high school in both languages. My base language is Spanish, so I'm always thinking Spanish. But I think that is beneficial because now, for instance, when I'm writing in Spanish, I think that my ideas are more coherent because I think that I have the structure on how to write in English. So for me, it has been very beneficial because now I can say that my writing in Spanish has definitely improved. And I don't know, that's something that is happening to me, and I don't know, is that related to the benefits?
Yeah, I can feel you too. Like a lot of uh, interesting people that I know who know and who can speak to a certain extent a language, a second language in addition to the mother tongue. But when I ask them the question, like, are you consider yourself bilingual? Like if I ask Kayla when we chat in the beginning of the workshop, like, does Kayla consider herself as a bilingual or not? The answer is a little bit reluctant. So I think from our perspective, we have a kind of expectation in the second language that we are talking about. We have the expectation that, well, that need to be a certain level that we categorize that we are proficient at both languages. even we can speak it to a certain extent, but it seems like we have the expectation. So a lot of international students who are even doing a degree in America, but when I ask them the question, they still say, I don't consider myself bilingual because in my expectation, I should have like using my second language as fluent as a native speaker or something like this. So there are a lot of, we're talking about a lot of benefits of having a bilingual brand. For example, we can think in different languages. So it means that we have spaces for more ideas. And so we not get to the language part, but also we know about it allow us to communicate with people outside our culture. So it means that it's good for us to have the access to the reading materials or the culture that is different from our country and our language as well. However, when it comes to the definition, like, are you a bilingual? A lot of people are still, shy away or hesitant to admit their abilities. So according to, there are a lot of definition out there, but according to Tong, he says something like this. As a bilingual, it means that an individual have the ability to speak a second language while following the concept and structure of that language rather than paraphrasing his or her mother tongue. So to a certain extent, I would say that in the case of international students, they can come here and then they can communicate well to the American-born or English native-speaking friends and colleagues. And also they can they can submit even like an essay written in English language. And their professor can understand what they write. To me, they are bilingual, competent bilingual student already. So they should be proud of their abilities to navigate that. However, I think what also pose challenges to international students is sometimes the feedback they receive cause some confusions and even some disappointment or embarrassment for them. And in this workshop, I will my argument is that you need to admit that is the characteristic, is a very natural feature of bilingual writing, and you have the ability to improve that comprehensibility in your writing delivery if you have good practice, and you can do that. But first of all, you should be proud of your abilities in order to use more than one languages. So let us look at one example. And so the example I have is, let's think of this sentence. 11 years have passed since SDA conference was last held in Edinburgh. So I want you to write down this sentence in another language that is different from your mother tongue. So it means I will write in Vietnamese, Andrea will write in Spanish, and Kayla will write in Spanish. Like, just do the best as you can. But when you write, ask yourself these 3 questions. Do you think there are differences between the English sentence that we are looking at and the sentence that you write first in your mother tongue? So in Kayla perspective, her first language will be English, and Kayla will write it in Spanish and see if there are differences there as well. And Andrea will do Spanish as the first language and English as the second language. But which one is more difficult for you? You write in your first or your second language? And the third question is, do you think your first language interfere with your second language when you write? All right, so I will let everyone have like 2 minutes to write this sentence, and write slowly so you can consider the question when you write, okay? All right. Can you share with me some of your experience when you are asked to do this task?
For me, I noticed the way the sentence structure really changes depending on the language you're writing in, especially how you treat verbs and adjectives and where those fall within the structures of the sentence.
Yes. So Kayla mentioned how can I say? I think I will use an issues that international also encounter right away is the word level. And as an international myself, when I write, sometimes the feedback I receive is, oh, you have a very awkward word choice or very strange word choice here. So yes, it can start the difficulty in navigating the second language can start with the minimum the most minimal meaningful part of the language, which is words. Do you also encounter the same issue or different issue, Andrea?
Yes, I think that definitely Spanish is interfering in my second language when I'm writing, and now I was trying to do the translation from English into Spanish, and then when I was doing this, I found that I was using the same structure in English into Spanish, and I was translating word by word, and then I just correct the sentence to make that coherent in Spanish. So
So
I found that. Mhm.
when you found when you do after you do the word by word, and you read the sentence is okay, right? Because the two languages seem to have similar sentence structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the Vietnamese structure also follow that kind of structure in English. When I learned English, my teacher said that in English language, the structure will be subject, verb, and object. But in some, I believe in some other languages, the structure is not fixed. And even when I read some of the article in English language, sometimes they use very different sentence structures as well. So I think when the language, if the language of the native language of the student is so different from English language, then the navigation will be more. They have to not just rephrase the word level, but also they have to think about the sentence structure level as well. And another thing that Andrew pointed out that um, if we are in a state that our mind works in the way that we can focus and concentrate only on one language at a time when we write, that we can write without a lot of interference. But if the student, the dominant language in their mind is to their first language, what their brain is doing is the constant translation. And they have to learn how to suppress the translation from first to second language when they write. And that may make the writing a little bit challenging for them in terms of thinking. So in terms of this sentence, for example, in Vietnamese version, when I write, it will look something like this. I hope that you, Andre, can also put in the chat box the Spanish version of this. But when I write it in Vietnamese version, I figure out that if I do the word by word translation, it will be in a total, a little bit different sentence structure. So Kayla, you will notice that in Vietnamese, in this sentence, specifically, we put the verb kind of, we talk about the time first. And then in English language, we use since, and it can include the idea of time indication. But in Vietnamese language, we have to add the other two words, the day, after since in order to have the meaningful sentence in Vietnamese. And also in Vietnamese, I realized that we don't have the word held or hold a meeting. So in order to find the equivalent idea or word in Vietnamese we have to change to a word that Vietnamese language has and English language has, and the word is organized. So we cannot use the equivalent word by word translation hold into Vietnamese if I want to write this sentence in Vietnamese. Yeah. So Andrea, do you think there's some also little words in this sentence that cannot be translated into Spanish, or you find with the strategy word by word translation?
I think that they can be translated into Spanish, most of them. Yeah. Yeah, I think that most of them, but the structure is going to be different in Spanish. So for
Yeah.
instance, 11 years have passed in English, right? But in Spanish, it could be similar. So the verb, which is have, is going to be at the beginning.
Mm.
So it's like have 11 years passed, for instance, that would be the structure in Spanish.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's like the
So
change that I'm seeing. And the word Edinburgh is different because Edinburgh in Spanish is with M instead of N.
oh really? So they don't borrow the word, but there's a Spanish word for it too.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So we can see that we mentioned about the word choices that will be different. The word other will be different. The grammar will be different because in Vietnamese grammar, we do not have a equivalent way to conceive, to think about time and deliver our meaning in terms of time and place at the same way that American people do. So when we learn English, we have to learn it explicitly that English grammar has, let's say, 12 tenses. And if you want to indicate an event that happened in the past, but have the impact until now, then we will use the tense called present perfect. But actually, when it comes to our original way of thinking and articulating ourselves, there's no such tense called present perfect. And the sentence structure is also different, as I showed in the word by word translation. So what does this task say about how the international student write in the second language? It means that there are some words in English language, if they lack the vocab in English language, they cannot kind of know how to articulate their ideas because they don't know what words they are searching out there. Second, if they do the word by word translation or sentence to sentence translation, it will be natural to them because their brain is kind of be affected by the first language. So that makes a natural feeling to them. But when it comes to the reader who read it, the brain works in a different way. It works in a different grammatical tense or different word choice. They will find that this is awkward or kind of strange to understand or to follow the thought of the student. So I think in the case of student, what we have to do is we need to improve our knowledge and understanding about the difference between two languages so that we can communicate to the target audience more effectively, especially in the case that our first language is to dominate our thought and our way to expressing our ideas. So I think the first characteristic that we learn about ourselves is that we must know how to navigate between two languages, and the two languages work kind of differently in all level, in the word level, structure level. So we need to acknowledge that each language has a preferred way of saying things and preferred ways of organizing thoughts. And that sometimes when we do word to word translation, the word in English is, in that case, should be, the meeting was held. So the how would be more natural. But because we do word-to-word translation from Vietnamese to English, maybe the word that I choose is organized, which is fine in this sentence, but in some other cases, it may communicate very different feelings and very different collocation or meaning to an English readers. Similarly, when we do sentence to sentence, if we do it in a Vietnamese way, it means we will add a lot of subordinate clause. But in English, I figure out that they're very direct. So the sentence kind of short, straightforward, and the emphasis of the sentence usually the subject of the sentence. But in Vietnamese language, maybe what we really mean to communicate and emphasize will be put at the end of the sentence. So if we write like that in English, that would be a little bit unnatural for an English reader or the professor who are American to follow our thought. So that being said, I think a bilingual competent writer will know that there are differences and they will train their brain to a certain extent that they feel comfortable to turn their idea directly from the concept to their second language. Usually it's very easy to translate from our non-dominant, I mean our second language, back to our mother tongue because we have more experience with our mother tongue. So that's why you see a very straight, direct arrows in this in this map, on this map, in this chart. But if we need to phrase our thought from our mother tongue to the second language, we are less confident. So that's, you see the dotted line here. But if our proficiency, language proficiency in the second language improve, there will be a stage when our idea doesn't have to go through our first language. It will go directly through the second language right away, which is, a lot of advanced English learners would be in that case. But international students, when they come here, their language proficiency really varies. So that's why maybe we need some scaffolding and different strategy to help the learners at the beginning. So we talk about word choice and sentence structure. Now I want you to think about like a broader and a little bit abstract idea in each language. So can you think of a concept that is translated into words, that can be translated into word or one word in your first language that is impossible to find equivalent words in English language?
I think Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but can't like the word lunch in Spanish almost be used as a verb? Like it's not just the lunch meal, but to eat lunch is also part of the word.
Yes.
That's one I had yesterday in my Spanish lesson, so it was fresh on my mind.
Lunch is like the how can I put it? It's like the food. I mean, I have a lunch, okay? And in Spanish, it's like almuerzo. And then also the idea of lunch, the food could be also the action, almorzar. But we don't say that in English. We don't say like luncher or something like that.
Or lunched or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to eat. But yeah, that I think that is a great example. I was thinking I don't have any example.
Yes,
there aren't a lot.
I feel like most of the time it seems like on the surface, one word can match with one word in the two languages, right? But I like your conversation, Andrea and Kayla, because when Kayla say, what do you think about lunch? Actually, in the mind of Andrea, what is activated in her mind is actually belong to Spanish culture. The time that she have lunch, the specific food that Andrea has lunch in Spain, maybe in Spanish language and culture is very different from the way Kayla think about lunch. Lunch, Kayla, what do you think about lunch in America?
It's more like a descriptive of like the time you ate than like I guess it's an experience, but I don't really think of it as an experience. It's more like time-based than anything.
And is that like sandwich, or do you have a particular typical food?
Right. So it's like a smaller, like quicker sandwiches, salad, quick lunch is usually how people think about it.
Yeah, and in Vietnamese, it's like it will be around noontime, and it's a very big meal. Like we eat and then we take a long nap. That's the point. How about in Spanish culture, Andrea?
Yeah, it's a big food. And usually we take lunch, or we eat lunch in English with friends or with our family. And probably we have like a conversation over the table, and we take like between 35 minutes and an hour. But it's I don't want to say like it's a lot of food, but it's food. It could be a lot.
Yeah, so it means that like the word, usually if we look at on the surface, we can immediately match the translation, the translated words. But if we go into the depth of it, like how it is put in a context, and we are talking about nouns, right? So it's pretty straightforward to us to put the concept into words. But sometimes when we think about verbs or adjective, it's definitely include different aspect of our culture and how we use it in context, right? But when we translate it into English, it will match with other words which totally have different meaning. For example, if the student, let's say an international student from Japan, if they are doing an assignment about how to design an interior design, and they have to describe their idea in English language, and they want to incorporate the idea of finding beauty in every aspect of imperfection in nature, and they want to talk about the aesthetic of things in existence that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. So those are the ideas that they want to reflect and want to talk about in their project. So in Japanese, they just have to say wabi sabi. And the people in the same community will kind of relatively think of the same thing, feel kind of relatively the same way. When Kayla and other American professors read about lunch, they will think about particular thing, but international students, they may think of different thing. So how communication work, how they can describe also the concept or the notion of wabi-sabi in English language that make the English professor understand, right? So that is the kind of word choice is they use the word here. You can say the word here is impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and absence of self nature. So the words here in English have negative connotation. But in Japanese culture, these words have positive connotation because it's the philosophy that they find beauty in those emptiness. So when you write an essay, that's what the awkward word choice is. You think that, oh, that word to me is actually positive in my culture. So I use that in my English essay. But when my American professor read it, it may communicate a very different message to them. So I feel like in those cases, the instructor can also talk through dialogue with the student in order to really understand what they think when they choose those words. But given my experience, I think those experience to talk across culture, like what we are doing now, is kind of rare, to be honest. Yeah. So the second characteristic that we have to understand about bilingual writer is that two languages are both activated simultaneously, even when you do not want to. So this is like from a neurology perspective, is both languages are active when bilingual read, hear, and speak one language alone. So I think if Kayla go to Spain and stay there for like, for me, I've studied in United States for 8 years. So if Kayla go to Spanish and your Spanish improve throughout 8 years, you also can, communicate and talk freely with Spanish friends and colleagues. But at the back of your mind, English, you cannot get rid of English. English is in your blood. Your American cultures is in there too. So you're kind of different. You're different from the Spanish people for sure, but compare with an American person who is only use English language, you're also different because your mind now can actually activate both Spanish and English. So that's the reason why it can cause some advantages and consequences of these language competition. So it means that you need to explicitly suppress the interference, the negative interference of the language that you don't want to be activated. You have to consciously and explicitly suppress them when you write so that it doesn't interfere with your English writing. Do you have those do you feel those kind of competition between two languages like that when you write, Andrea?
Yes. For instance, I have experienced that when I'm taking a difficult class, when I'm taking theory, for instance, and that theory is so heavy to understand or to comprehend in English. So I'm trying to comprehend that in Spanish. And that happened to me last semester, not last semester, I mean, the first semester. In one of the classes, we were talking about theory and politics. And I mean, sincerely, I couldn't understand what they were saying in English. And I tried to put my ideas or my interpretations in English, and it wasn't successful. So I had that experience that sometimes when it's so difficult, my brain is immediately, it's like a survival thing. In order to understand that, my brain is just try to translate that in Spanish, because otherwise you're not going to understand what they're saying. So that happened to me.
Yes. So actually, your brain will go with the easy option, and that is a good way because otherwise it will be overload, right? So that's why it may opt for the international student when they hear English, but when they need to write what they understand about a concept, they need to write it in the first language because it's easier for them to process that. And that's leads to the second task, like when you need to observe your writing, how do you write? So the thing is, we will see, what our brain is comfortable and best functional. Do we have to write in the first language first and then write in the second language? B, you will write directly in your second language, in English. C, you write in both languages and then translate the first language part into English later. It means like you code switch, you mix the two languages and you write them down, and then you editing and changing it a little bit later. Or D, you use all three types of writing procedure depending on the subject. I think I need to add E as well, because I know some international students, they will use also machine translator. Like they will write it in Chinese, for example, and then they will put that into Google Translate and have it output as the English version. Do you think it will be, like accurate things to do?
I have all the experiences, and I think that regarding the Google translation thing, I mean, sometimes it could be useful, but the problem with that is that sometimes they are translating word by word. And I think that that's problematic. And sometimes I've been using that, but then I have to edit the whole paragraph or whatever. But I think that I'm doing most of the time the code switching. So I definitely go for the C and the D. And definitely sometimes Google Translator, but I don't know, sometimes it could be, difficult to translate something.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
would say that, yeah.
And then I'm using a lot of Grammarly.
A lot of Grammarly. Okay, so yeah, we will talk about those tools later, but I totally agree with you that it's really, and what I'm doing here is because, when I learned English, there used to be a time when English language teachers say, we have like no mother tongue policy in class, so you must write directly in the second language. I think that is a good practice. If the objective of the activities is to make sure that students know how to write English language accurately. But when you do that kind of policy in class, you need to know that it will affect and like slow down their thinking fluency, because they will automatically think in their first language. So I would say that for learners who are comfortable to write in the first language, and of course, especially international students who come to the United States when they finish high school and they learn English a little bit late in their life. So it means the first literacy is kind of stable and fixed. It's okay. Let them write in the first language, especially in the phrase that they need to brainstorm ideas. And then later, they will work on the accuracy part. That's work with A, if your brain works that way. It means you need to learn what is the best way that your brain works, and then go along that way until the product is what you are expected. So that's for the student here, that you feel comfortable writing in the first language, you can use it at the beginning phase of your writing. Now you write directly in second language. Yeah, some student even some student that I work with, they say that I feel like English is my second language, but I'm more clear when I write in English language directly. Then I write in Vietnamese and then translate. That's fine too. But you may also have problems with, let's say, the structure. For example, in Vietnamese, we always put the topic sentence at the end of the paragraph. So after I write in English language, I'll just have to read it again and work on my topic sentence. In other words, in other cases, when you work with C, why you have to write in both languages? Because that's how my brain works. It works with the mixture of two languages. So in writing, and writing is a very unnatural process. It means it's a learned skill, right? So I think it's okay for you. You have time when it comes to writing talk, you have time. When speaking, you have to speak right away, right? But in writing, you have sometimes to plan ahead. So yes, you can also write in both languages when you brainstorm and generate ideas. And then after that, again, you work with the organization and the logic later. And it again depends on the topics, and depends on how your brain works, and depends on your language proficiency in the second language. So that's normal. And I would say that whatever you choose to do, it can lead you to be a successful writer. Because even, the most what we call successful bilingual writer, and I quote Mr. Beckley here, and he's a novelist and he is a English non-native speaker. He even says something like, I think I'm less assured when I write English than I would be if I write in my first language. So I have to test each sentence over and over to be sure that it's all right and that I haven't introduced some element that isn't English. But the tricky part here is we don't grow up in let's say in UK, in America, in Australia. So actually it takes us time to learn it explicitly that this part isn't English, but this part isn't natural to say in the second language, because it doesn't exist in the target language culture or communication, for example, like that. And it is a phenomenon, is our way of writing until the end of our life. And we have to admit that. So I think that is the very first step.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes in my case, when I'm writing, probably I'm writing in English, but I feel that I don't feel sure about how does that work or how does that sound, for instance. And I'm putting that same English sentence into Google Translator to see, is that coherent? Is that okay to do that? Or is that like problematic? Because I feel so bad when I'm using that tool. Is that okay, or I shouldn't do that?
I mean, it's a tool. You're saying it's a tool, right? So it means that you have to be the mastermind after the tool. So it means that I do it by myself too, because it saves you time. And most of the time, the word by word translation, as three of us discussed, can work to a certain extent. But what is conveyed through writing is more than word. Is sentence structure, is logic, is organization of idea. And that's we need our editing expertise there. So as long as you check the translated version and you make sure that you use your grammar knowledge and your writing knowledge to navigate and fix the details, it's successfully communicative enough to a reader, then I think it is okay. Of course, it's my opinion, and that's how I use Google Translate as well. Because I'm thinking of writing this way. So when I learn English, the teachers give me the colorful blocks, like just the legal pieces like this, and ask me to write an essay. Well, the kind of essay is like a kind of house I'm going to build. And you see, this is my product. It still look like a Vietnamese temple, even though I use the block, I use the English block that I learned. But with my American friend, when I come here and I study and I look at their essay, it's look like American. And we use the same material, right? But we write in a different way. So come back to your question. I think what you can do is also involve your American friends and colleagues in the United States. Well, if they learn Spanish, we will be their resource. So if we learn English, there will be your resource. So you will compare explicitly your version, your house version and their house version, and see what the detail that kind of mismatch. And I will demonstrate that to you later in this workshop, that by comparing that, we can fix the details. So next time we can build a house like our American friend, and it's still our ideas, and that's the point. So my argument is, if you need to write in English language, involve your friends and colleagues who are American as a resource. And I'm stopping with friends and colleagues and writing center in this case for a dialogue, because I feel like professors, sometimes they are kind of busy and they don't have time to comment on the logics or the organization of our writing. So we have to be responsible for ourselves. But what I think that could be, how can I say, like less pressurized for international student, if your class have a lot of international students, is that you allow the international student to have support, some kind of mentor support like this, in order to improve their second language writing and understand the nature of how their brain works when they write. And what they write may not reflect the quality of their thinking, right? So it's more like it is the language part that definitely they can improve and not their thinking abilities. So that leads us to the characteristic 3. We can become biliteracy if we want and get access to the right resource. So it means that every international student who can enter a university in the US, they know what present perfect is in English. They know English grammar. They have to meet the language proficiency requirement. It means that we international students know how to format. However, what's problematic here is when we immerse ourselves in a new culture and new requirement that we have to go and attend lecture and write in the English language, what we have to navigate is we need to know in which situation this kind of word choice, sentence structure, grammatical tense is used, and we need to know that which meanings it can convey from the perspective of a hearer and reader. So that's why do not write English alone. You definitely need some tools like Grammarly, or like I said before, your American friends and colleagues to explicitly teach you the perspective of the reader so you can communicate successfully in this environment. So that is about the consciousness. You have to be conscious about how your brain works, how you write, and then once you embrace that as a strength and not as a weaknesses, then you can embrace bilingualism and work well in an American classroom. However, in the next task, I want to introduce to you some scenario in terms of writing that I witnessed in American classroom. So you will see that the responses to our writing will vary from class to class. So in the first scenario, Andrea, would you mind helping me with the first scenario? Just read the requirement of the professor here.
Yes, the quotation paragraph. You want me to read that? Okay.
Yes.
So language. Every written work that you submit or post on Blackboard should be free from any cosmetic errors, grammar, spelling. You're always expected to demonstrate your highest quality writing. Casual or chat style language, examples, text language, blogging language is not acceptable. If English is your second language, always have a native speaker of English proofread your written work prior to submission. A failure to meet this expectation will result in point deduction. Okay, that's
yes,
it.
This is an excerpt of syllabus for language requirement that you may encounter in a higher ed classroom in America. So from your perspective, when you read this requirement, how can you interpret the expectation of the professor?
For me, the tone is very stern and might be very intimidating to someone, particularly someone who English is their second language in the way it's written.
Yeah, yes. So definitely, okay, international student, this is the truth. This is like, sometimes this is the hard truth that you have to accept is some professors will hold a very strict and high standard. So I think their intention, so this is how you can interpret their intention, right? So the professor intention is that after you get out of their classes, your writing will supposed to stand very little difference or unnoticeable difference compared with your American friends. It means that they want you to try your best in order to become a very successful non-native speaker or student. So even though I agree with Kayla that it could be a little bit scared to actually to read this requirement, but it means that and when I talk about fairness in this case, it will be very debatable or controversial. But if you look on the price side of it, it means, I think it's implied that you need to actively seek help or assistance or collaboration, I would say, from a native speaker of English, and you will be, like amazed how open-minded and how eager your American friends are there to help you along the process. But this is one of the scenario that you need to pay attention to the language part when you work. And with these classes and scenario, you need to make sure that you spend a lot of time, of course, longer than a monolingual speaker in order to finish your writing. So in the next scenario, Kayla, would you mind helping me to read this?
When one student explained to her professor that her sentences tended to be long because she is a native Spanish speaker, the professor responded, "You're not in Puerto Rico anymore."
Andre, what do you think?
I think that that's extremely problematic, what he's saying there, because I mean, for instance, in my case, my PhD, what I'm pursuing is in Latino, Latin American, Caribbean studies. And for me, it's kind of unacceptable, that type of language, because I mean, for several reasons, and especially because number one, Puerto Rican students, some of them, they're part of the US, but some of them, their language is Spanish. So their first language is Spanish, and they are coming here to the US for several reasons, for economic reasons, political reasons. They're coming to the US and they are receiving these type of, responses. And it's like perpetuation of, of traumas for them. And for me, it's like unacceptable. And yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so if you encounter this situation or similar responses or feedback with your writing, I want you to understand that actually compare with the majority of people on this planet, I think bilingualism and multilingualism is still a new phenomenon. And so I think in this case, we shouldn't take it like too personal. And I think you can take this as a chance to explain to your professor. Of course, what the professor react or respond maybe escalate the tension between you two, or on another scenario, it will help that student, that professor understand your perspective as well. So sometimes international student, you may come from a culture that is not a two-way dialogue between you and the teachers, like you cannot voice your perspective. But I think in America, you have the right to talk to professor and explain like why you have issue with the sentence structure, and maybe a sample of writing or an explicit way to show how two language work may get you to a common ground of understanding, and that you can go from there. But you can, again, feedback can be two-way in America. So I have seen a lot of international students, if they are in this case, they kind of speak up and explain why they have the issue with that sentence phrases. And
I think, sorry, Mary, not to cut you off, but also something like that to to speak up with support, right? So that's something where in my office, the ISSS office, if we had a student who a professor said something like that to, we would like to know about it, to be able to help guide the student through that and how they can advocate for themselves as well, because you know, there are those cultural differences in how you may interpret what that professor is saying, and also, you know, just in terms of what's considered acceptable versus not acceptable. And yeah, so having those conversations with support from people like ISSS or other native English speakers who can understand, I'm assuming this professor was an American professor, right, but can understand that cultural viewpoint too.
Yes, definitely. So I think that's very important for international students, again, to know the support that they can get from on campus, and know about their rights as well. And that is the two example. And the last example I want to introduce to you today is another professor. So and this is kind of what I witnessed myself as well. So I'm from an Asian country. So I asked the professor, do you expect me to write about what I learned from other scholar about culture in my research paper? So in Vietnamese, and also I think in Chinese language, we don't have the genre that more like direct reporting. So when we write a research paper, it's more like in a discussion style. So what we are lacking again is the topic sentence in our argument. But when I come to the US, I learned that the genre or the rhetoric, the persuasion is different, because what matters is your argument and your thesis. What is called in writing a thesis statement, like what you think about this topic. So some professor, I think this professor did a good job in order to explain the assignment requirement directly and explicitly. So the professor explained to me that, as you can see in my instruction, in my syllabus, the most important thing is what you think, not what other people think. You can cite and give credits to them, but I will care for what you think. You may make some minor grammatical mistake. I encourage you to check your work carefully. However, lack of fluency in English should not keep you from getting the maximum score in my course. If I can still understand your ideas and the way you present it, you will get points. So it means that I want to say that in America, it's a continuum, is a large spectrum how people react to your bilingual writing, and you can be the person who advocates for yourself, and also can ask the professor to understand more about your phenomenon, so that your professor can like be understanding like the professor in this scenario, for example. But with this professor, what I think he did great is he explained the requirement of the assignment with by taking into consideration that idea generation and presentation can be varied from culture to culture, from language to language, and he's here to help the student speak out and enjoy the direct style of presenting themselves in English American culture. So that is the third scenario that you may find on campus. So some strategy to help you succeed in your second language writing. I would say that step one, what we learned so far in this workshop, is to know yourself and embrace your voice. It means to acknowledge who you are and observe your habits of writing, what works for you, what don't, what is more time efficient. So that's why when Andrea asked me, like, do you think if I write I write with the Google Translator, is this okay? Is this fair? I would say that, well, if it's like time efficient, in terms of time efficient, like you can do that, but you need to check and make sure that the English version will be successfully communicate what you think, and it will be match the requirement of the assignment from the professor perspective. And you have to be the person who take the initiative to create a safe and welcoming learning environment for yourself first. Don't stress yourself out and don't be afraid, but praise yourself that you are performing something in your non-dominant or your second, your third language. And lastly is you realize that sometimes you have no problem with your speaking and you think your language proficiency is really good, but why you struggle with writing? Well, you need to understand that it's normal because writing is unnatural skill even for the English native speaker. So we need to have explicit attention to our linguistic form and function in order to become a better writer. And that's lead me to another another illustration here is for international students. Yes, it will take you longer time to write. So don't wait until the last minute to finish your writing because writing is a process. And think about this. I don't know if this will remind you, Kayla, of your college writing or Andrea with what you are doing now, right? But we need to go from brainstorming, planning, and the thing is drafting. I know in some culture, maybe you don't talk about the process of writing in this detail. So you expect yourself to sit down and write a perfect essay right away, especially in English language. But that's not a natural process of writing is. You can say that it's a lot of draft. It means that you need to, and as a bilingual, you may need to do it in your first language first before you move to second. So allows yourself to do a lot of draft and expect it to even have the peer review. And then you revise it and you add information. And then last thing you do is editing and proofreading. Another thing I want you to pay attention here is some people expect the writing center to edit and proofread, but you will see that it's at the very end of the process. And what the writing center do is more with the planning, drafting, and help you to reflect on your idea arrangement. But as an international student, I also see a lot of my colleagues who are doctoral students or some faculty members use the editing services. And usually it's expensive in order to have another native speaker to proofread and pay attention to the micro level like grammar, word choice. So that's the reason why I think, have a good network of friends and colleagues who are Americans can be a very useful tips for your last part of the circle. Or what I'm doing also is collaborate with other international students. What you don't expect is even I and Andrea here may have very different, language proficiency, but actually international students can support each other. And sometimes we can also edit and proofread each other in order to help, polish our writing as well. So form a writing group and have those people available to you as as a support. And this is what I show you, some samples of what the writing would look like. So you will see that in this research, they captures writing of a bilingual person. And what you will see is on your left is the drafting. You see that it's ugly, it's messy, but it's natural. And then after the draft, this bilingual person will do it in a kind of mixing. So if Andrea chose C as the option when she wrote, this is what look like to her when she write is a mixture of first and second language. And that is also a strategy that you can do in terms of word choice. You can write the first language word choice if it sounds natural to you and use the slashing to write it in the second language. And one word in first language can be translated into different English words, for example. You can just keep use the lashing and put all the option there. And then later, when it comes to the end of your writing, you will sit and then focus only on the word choice and choose the most appropriate word that makes sense to you. So that is the strategy of mixing the two languages when you write as a bilingual. So step one, understand that writing is a process and have different phases. Task two is to pay attention to grammar in use. It means that international student, you need to familiarize yourself with text in the English scenario, in an English genre. So what I usually do is I take out a text in English language and then I erase or I omit all the grammar part of it. And for example, if my genre, I need to write in academic writing, so it means I should take a text from a course book or from a journal paper, for example, like that. And what I'm doing is I just, every day, you just need like 10, 15 minutes, take out the grammar part out of the text, and then try to reconstruct it again by yourself, and then check with the original sources to see what tense is used. Because when we learn English, we learn it separately, kind of out of context. Like for example, today we learn past simple, and today we learn present simple. But in writing, in action, in use, the tense can be usually combined with each other. So in which case that they will use this tense, and in which case that we use that tense, and how these work. So this is very useful practice because again, in some cultural language, you may not know about the tense. You don't have the concept of tense. So this is a way to learn the preferred ways of using language from a native speaker's perspective. And in terms of sentence level, I don't know in other languages, but in Vietnamese, I bet that we have a lot of subordinate clause like I presented before, and different way to form my sentences. But I realized in English language, correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me what you think from your perspective. But I think in English language, basically they have three main sentence structure to deliver their thinking and their ideas. It can be a sequence, it can be a coordination, a support ordination. But you see the length of the sentence is not quite long. So in English language, when I write a draft and submit it to my professor, usually one sentence is like 5 lines, which is very hard to follow, especially with a lot of subordinate clause. So knowing that in English language, the way they think is direct and in understandable chunk, sequence, coordination, subordination would be helpful. And then when you familiarize with this kind of logic delivery, then your I bet your writing will be more like clearer, like clarity. And even with the subordination, usually when you read one sentence in the subordination, Kayla, would you help me with the first sentence under the subordination?
Mhm. As research grants from the British government are getting scarcer, universities are having to seek funding from private industry.
So when you read this sentence and when you process it as a native speaker, which phrase stand out to you like the most information delivered in this sentence will be in the first part before the comma or after the comma?
So in my mind, I think of it as, when I see the word as, I think of it as cause and effect. So this, so that is how I would, as soon as I see as, that's how I see the sentence.
So you will see it in like a relationships between two clauses.
Yes.
Yes. And so when I read the book, it says that actually the main information is emphasized here is the university are having to seek funding from private industry because it's the main class. So that's how explicitly we learn, and that describe the relationship here is the first, you say that is the cause, right? And the second part is more like an effect. So if you want to deliver an idea that emphasize the effect of a situation, then this can be, and you want to emphasize the effect, that this can be the sentence structure that you need to employ. And the logic, you can see the logic flow between two phases, which can be different in your first language. Of course, I cannot, like really relate to your first language in this case, but my point here is you can think beyond the grammar. You think about the relationship and the delivery effect of the sentence structure in these cases. So I have two versions of the same text here. What I want you to do is spend some time to look at each version and tell me which version do you think flow more naturally to you and how is it different from each other. Okay, I will give you like 2 minutes to read the text. All right, I want you to use the chat box and tell me which version do you think flow more naturally. Okay. Okay, this is a very interesting result, and it showed me that sometimes what we think we know about English, from the perspective of the English native speakers, might be also like different. So actually, Kayla choose version 1 that sound more natural, and all of us we choose version 2 because this is what I take out from a book, a writing book, and it say that we should write in version 2 because it say that, for example, Norma has had a terrible 5 years. So the keywords here is the 5 years, and it would be easier to follow if we have the old information at the beginning of the sentence, and then the new information is built upon it. Kayla,
That's very interesting. Well, I had a hard time answering it because as I was reading it, I guess I was thinking between what would be more natural speaking, which would versus what's the form for writing. So I did think version 2, that's how you would read it in a news article because it's very listed. But if I was speaking to a friend and they said she had a terrible 5 years, I'd be like, well, what happened? So I would really care about like what was the problem instead of when it happened. So when I was thinking about naturally how that would go in conversation, like I'd want to hear what happened. I don't really care when it happened, right? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So that's just the way I was thinking about it in my mind. Yeah. But written wise, I do think version 2 is what we would expect in like a news article.
Okay, okay. So first of all, welcome the new participant. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Okona, but yeah, welcome to join us in today workshop. So there are two things I want to tell Kayla. First, Kayla is always interesting from the perspective of international student to hear our American friend explain to us, you know, how communication is made and processed and understood from your perspective. And now you are making a distinguish between, you know, how we talk and how we write, which I pointed out at the beginning of the workshop is your conversational proficiency is kind of different from your writing proficiency. So in writing is a different genre and a different way to presenting your thoughts, right? And Kayla just demonstrated that with the first version is maybe more conversational and easier for the person who communicate with you to understand when they listen and follow the story. Whereas in version 2, it might be one of the way you can follow when you write. The idea here is can be less difficult when you see the connection between sentences and your second sentence kind of repeat and build on the information you mentioned in the previous sentence. So we have this in academic writing. When you mention, sometimes we bring up a very new words or a terminology, but we do not define it until later. It may cause the reader uh, like boredom and they will just stop reading, continue reading. So what I want to draw attention here is the second point here is when you write, when you read, think about the connection between sentences. So to make sure that the information is logical and smoothly go after each other and build on each other. So I think that is the idea here is I will kind of send you, I will stop sharing now. So now I will send you um, like a document. And what I want you guys to do is to download it. And I will give you the answer after the workshop. I will give you the answer to this task, but you can do it alone. Is to practice reading the sentence carefully in order to see the connection between sentences. And then when you put everything together to see how sentence and sentence can be built upon each other in order to form a coherent paragraph. And this is a part called data collection and analysis. So you can see that your paper can be broken into smaller part and each smaller part have the relationship with each other. So, okay, so the next step after you work with your mind map, your process of writing, and then you work on understanding that you need to build kind of a flow in your essay. The next part is to have a model text, and then you analyze it and then reconstruct it, like to build your essay. It will look like something like this. So let's say you want to write your assignment is to write a response paper or a research paper. I think that it would be helpful that you have a model paper. And what you are studying in the model paper is to break it into meaningful construction. So you can see that in this model text, you see the writer doing something here. Do you think that is familiar to what you do when you write or when you read?
Yes, because for instance, when I'm using or I'm writing paragraphs, at the end, I'm trying to deconstruct those paragraphs. And it's like when you are, I don't know, the example that I have is when you are designing a cloth, for instance, and you are
Yeah.
putting different different pieces together. And sometimes this sentence, it doesn't work here, probably is working in the other paragraph. So yeah, it's like a designing something. I don't know.
Yes, definitely. So what I suggest during here to help you is that there's a lot of things you can learn from the model text, and like what Andre is saying, I think that's exactly what the clothes designer do. Is they have the a kind of dress that they really want to know how it is constructed. They do it by break it into, like different thing, and then build it up again. Yeah. So with the writing, I think that's helpful if we do it the same thing in the English genre, because we want to go to the mind of the English writer to see how it is constructed. So first of all, we can look at the micro level with a word sentences, like how they connect sentence to each other. So you can see that they use different colorful to underline the transition words. But also after that, they will work with macro level, like what is the main idea of this paragraph, and they can do it and explain it in their mind in even their first language and compare how it's different with the first language. Because remember that I told you that when you write, you may write it in your first language style, and by labeling and pointing it out here, later when you write and you know that you tend to write in the first language, you can check it explicitly that am I repeating the mismatch here between two style. So that's why I also encourage you to reflect on how it can be different from your first language construction. And then after that, you can work out an outline, like something like this. I will send an example in the chat box. So this is what the outline in English genre look like. And you will see that from the situation that what I think is important and is directly, explicitly stated in the thesis statement. So I would say that you learn the logic from the model text, but the warning here is learn the logic, but do not copy. So what do I mean here is sometimes we have a topic to write, like for example, does the company need a policy on workplace bullying? And this is a sentence that we learn from the model text, and we write it and rephrase it in the second sentence. So I let you to have some minute to read the two. What do you think about this paraphrase? Is this good enough to you? Or is that like plagiarism, or it's okay?
What is the paraphrase paragraph? The
The
second one?
paraphrase is the according to the workplace.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that they are paraphrasing.
Yeah, they're paraphrasing, right? They do not repeat the structure or the sentence. So if you are from a culture that need to explicitly learn what paraphrase means, then you need to know that when you paraphrase, you cannot repeat the exact words, or the wording should be different, and you just summarize like the content and how you understand about the content, the idea. So one way to do is to read the original sentence and and then just put it aside and think how you can say it in your own words. That is one strategy. But the thing is, when you write an academic paper, it's more than just citing and repeating the idea of other people. It's more like, what do you think your purpose is, like a knowledge transforming? It means like, okay, what do we go from there? What do this part, like tell me and link to my thesis statement? So that is what better. So you can see that in academic writing, more than paraphrasing, is like synthesizing, compare and contrast. So what count here is not just only paraphrase and summarize, but also synthesize. For example, you can compare this with another study and say that, well, together these two studies provide compelling evidence that bullying is an ongoing problem in the US workplace. So that is when you write, think about from the model text, where is the voice of the writer? And if you are coming from a language culture that the voice of the writer is implicit, then study about how it's become explicit in the English genre. So that is what I'm going so far. You pay attention to some element in your writing in order to finish your outline, argument, and understand the logic of your writing. So this is why, working with a partner explicitly can be helpful. All right. So, Opona, can you read this conversation for me? Is it possible that you unmute yourself and then say something?
All right.
Hi, can you
Hi.
help me to read this conversation between two international friends?
Okay. My partner's structure in the introduction part was in this order. 1, describe the current situation. 2, introduce the essay topic. 3, explain the background issue of the topic. And then finally, 4, provide some explanation that played a bridge function for readers to understand what the second and third paragraphs would explain. On the other hand, the first paragraph of the introduction part of my essay had the following structure. 1, describe the background information. 2, describe the current situation. 3, introduce the essay topic. And 4, provide some statistical data. Overall, through this move of the first paragraph, I realized that the last sentence of the paragraph with the bridge function made it easier for me to understand the essay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your clear reading of this. And I like the slow pace, because this is how we can help each other to understand from the perspective of the reader. So you can see what the international students are doing here is compare their structure, their writing of the same topic, but they have different way to create the outline and the logic within the sentences, and give feedback on each other, which version, which flow is more easy to understand and follow from the perspective of the reader. So if you can find a friend like that to work with you and think of your essay and your writing from that perspective of the reader, it will be very helpful for you. The last things I want to introduce in today's workshop is some tools to help you with your editing and proofreading. So the first tool I want to introduce is a corpus tool called Ludwig. And what you can do with Ludwig, you can also find out on the website. So when I talk, you can also look up Ludwig on your internet browser. But what it does is, for example, sometimes we write something and we say, does, is this really what I mean, or will the reader understand this, or does it sound good? So for example, I don't know, will the reader understand this phrase? When I phrase my idea this way, will they understand this? So you tap the phrase into the tool, and it will give you like a list of results, and you compare the result that the native speaker usually use with your original phrasing. And so that's how you can, write in their words. So that will be more familiar to them when they read. So that is a tool that I use called Ludwig. The second tools that I use for word choice is collocation, because in English collocation dictionary, because in English language, some words go together. So for example, this adjective go with this noun. If you choose another adjective that makes sense in your first language, but do not go together with the second words with the nouns, it may take the native speaker reader a while to say, okay, what does she mean here? Because they do not often see these two words go together. So I think collocation is dictionary is also another tool that helpful. Another thing is, do you want to diversify your word choices? So you don't want to repeat a word again and again. So a dictionary called thesaurus will help you. For example, I don't want to use the word hypothesis all the time in my essay. So when I plug hypothesis here, I can see, different words that I can use to substitute this when I go. So it increased my word variety and my diversity. And that is the last step after you editing and proofreading is ask for feedback on ideas, argument, organization, and logic when you write. And that is something that the writing service in our school usually can be very helpful for us. So I would say that you can go to the writing center and help them to look at your outline and see if they have any feedback on it. So in order to close this program, I want to say that I want you to look for linguistically responsive teachers and ask your teacher to understand your background of writing. And then you have all the tools so that you can organize a supportive social network, so it can help you with the writing. And you can also use available campus services to help with your brainstorming and drafting. And thank you so much for joining me in this workshop. I hope that you find it useful and helpful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. All that information, it has been extremely useful.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much.